Good evening, everyone. It's Necro Thursday, and welcome to the Necromaniacs Horror Podcast. But this week, we are kicking off our sub-series, Mayhem Down Under. This is episode 1 of Mayhem Down Under. And as a lot of you longtime listeners know, we're quite fond of these specifically hard-ass Australian films that I wouldn't say they're actually horror films, but they're adjacent to horror films because of the true horror and true crime nature of these films. They're horrific. However, there's no actual supernatural element associated with these movies. So we decided to bring our friend Seldon Hunt, artist, longtime friend, road guy. You might have seen him out there on the road with Sun and ISIS, and you've definitely seen his artwork if you're a fan of heavy music, of a very specific genre. And he also is an aficionado, or I would say he is an aficionado. I don't consider myself to be an expert in this field, but he's turned me on to a bunch of these films, as well as he's turned Jeff on to these things. So we're kicking this off, and we're going to be doing a bunch of these over the next few months. So how's it going, Seldon? And welcome to the show.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm glad to be here.
And Jeff, how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. I'm excited about this. Seldon and I are old buddies. We've done some touring together, and it's good to hear his voice again.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of horror stories, there you go.
Yeah, man. Speaking of horror story, yeah. Before we get going on this, I just want to shout out the rest of the Horsemen. As you guys know, we are part of an elite group of content makers at war with mediocrity. And kicking things off every week, every other Monday, we have Horror Wolf 666, brought to you by Brandon Legion. Next up in the rotation is Jackie Smith's Into the Necrosphere on Tuesdays. Wednesdays is Everything Went Black, which is my sort of variety show of podcasting. I return on Thursday with Jeff, Mike, and now Seldon for Necromaniacs for Necro Thursdays. Friday, we have Spitball Media. Saturday is a day off, and you get to go out, enjoy yourself, smell the roses, touch some grass, like that sort of thing. Sunday, Carl Hakara brings us Soul Knox, and Carl and I are full on into our Darkness Weaves collaboration, where we explore the work of Carl Edward Wagner. And right now, we're pretty well into our coverage of the Kane short stories. Pretty much over the next couple of months, we'll be completing the short stories and moving on to the novels. Iblis Manifestations puts episodes out on Wednesdays, and that's brought to you by Cheyenne of the great band Trivax. And Carl, by the way, Carl also releases episodes on Thursdays too. So he's you get a twofer with Carl every week. And that's it, man. So check out all the shows, share it with your friends. If you like one, you'll probably like the rest of them. So there you go. So anything you've been checking out lately, Jeff? Anything interesting?
Yeah, you could say that. I've had this whole week off in between. I left my last job. I'm starting a new job on Tuesday, so I took a week off in between. And I had this theory that if I do as little as possible, the week will last longer. No, it's well, it's already Saturday, so that didn't quite work. But I found I watched all of the Scream movies in a span of 24 hours.
How did that go, man?
Yeah, I don't even know how I got on this. I was just strolling through like the horror section of HBO Max, and I was like, "Oh, Scream! I haven't watched this in a while. Sure, I'll watch that." And then I just watched the next one and watched the next one, and I kind of remembered. I was like, "Oh yeah, I don't really love these movies." I mean, the first one is iconic and classic in some ways, but watching it now, you start to really, and you pick at it, like none of this makes any sense whatsoever. And as the movies go on longer and longer, they make less and less sense. But after watching, 2, I was like, yeah, I guess I'll watch 3. Oh yeah, I guess I'll watch 4. I don't know. They seem to appeal to a different generation now. I know what the last 2 really seem to be appeal to the younger folks. And I don't know. I just they're not for me, but I did spend whatever, like, 10 hours watching them for reasons I can't even think of. I don't know. It just happened.
I like the first
the
one,
only way
but
I could watch those myself now is to watch them all in sequence. I think if I just watch any of them just by itself as a single view movie, I would be sorely disappointed. But I think if I watch them all, you get in that mode, keep going.
Yeah, exactly.
I only really like the first one. I can't really like stomach the other ones, to be honest. And I got some theories about this. I mean, I think I mentioned to you that I'm working on this book about like horror in the new millennium. And like at least in the US, I feel like in the late 90s, at the close of the 20th century, horror was kind of like at an all-time low, really. And with like these ironic films like Scream. And it took like the Europeans, like specifically the French, really to kind of turn things around. And with that, French New Extremity, like Gaspar Noé, and all these filmmakers who are taking kind of art house and combining it with like extreme horror and making these like films, which actually are kind of similar in some ways to these Australian movies we're about to talk about.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's my take on it. I feel like the United States, the US was in the shitter when it comes to horror in the late 90s.
Yeah, and it's interesting that Wes Craven was behind all the Scream movies, because he tried to do the meta thing a bit with Wes Craven's New Nightmare, which hadn't seen it in a while. It made me want to go back and check that out. That was a few years before Scream and very self-referential and all that. So I'm kind of curious to rewatch that. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff. You could stream all the Scream movies, all the Saw movies, and all the Friday the 13th. And I was like, I'm going to pick one of these to just watch every one. And I picked Scream.
When did Saw first start out?
I was living in North Carolina, so I want to say 2003.
Yeah, okay. So it's like definitely in the 2000s. Yeah, because there's a whole like I got this whole thing I'm writing and working on right now about that sort of changeover, because that really was like kind of the beginning of like this kind of more extreme element of horror in the United States filmmaking.
Yeah.
Well, that was Australian, I think, the first one, wasn't it?
Was it?
I think so. The James Wan and his writing partner. Fuck, I can't think of his name. They're both they're both Australian.
Oh shit. So there you go. See, that's all part of that whole continuum,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I also I rewatched Blackcoat's Daughter by Oz Perkins, because I saw Longlegs in the theater. And I know a caller is mentioned Longlegs. Real quick, I loved it. I thought it was phenomenal.
That's going to be a big discussion, I think, when we all three of us finally get together to talk about that one. And once again, Oz Perkins, like, that I hate that term elevated horror, but I once again, I have to believe that it has to do with what the French were doing in the beginning of the 21st century with like Alexandre Aja and like all those guys making these or Claire Denis, like approaching the genre from more of like an art house sort of perspective, as opposed to just like making a gore movie,
Right. Yeah, exactly. Oz Perkins is I think the real deal, man. This is only his fourth film, but I've liked or appreciated everything he's done so far. Like the two films in between, Gretel and Hansel, and I Am the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House. I liked the house movie more than I liked Hansel and Gretel, but I didn't really care for that one too much, but it was still interesting to watch.
Yeah, the house movie is good. It's kind of riff on like a Shirley Jackson short story, and Blackcoat's Daughter is by far my favorite work that he's done. I mean, though I did enjoy Longlegs definitely, but Blackcoat's is still like my number one.
Yeah, interesting. Those two. Well, we'll get when we talk about it, but I feel there's some thematic links between those two movies.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Maybe we're in the same universe,
Yeah, universes are so cool right now.
Yeah.
What about you? What have you been up to, Mike?
Not watching a whole lot really. I just been kind of like plowing through a bunch of reading right now. But I saw this movie called The Apostle on Hulu,
Oh, yeah.
which was kind of like a lot of people seem to be talking about it, and it was definitely I liked 70% of the movie, and
Yeah.
then it was gory as hell, man, for sure. It was like the violence actually almost had a Sam Raimi element to it, you know, where it was this borderline preposterous level of violence that would happen in the film. Uh, I like the idea of it. Basic concept was pretty cool, but like I feel like it kind of wandered a little bit at the end.
Yeah, it felt like a big studio version of like of a folk horror movie. Like it
Yeah,
just felt, yeah, I agree with you about the 70, liking about 70% of it.
yeah. Um, been deep into House of the Dragon, and
Mm.
been just involved in that world. Primarily, I would watch the episode we would watch the episode on Sunday. That's kind of like our thing, and then like watch it again before the next episode. And I don't know. That's my thing, dude. I fall in. I'm a mark for all that, you know, dark fantasy, like well, I wouldn't consider it sword and sorcery, but like that kind of, epic fantasy. It's kind of I'm a mark for all that stuff.
Me
I
too.
I wanted to ask because I don't know if I mentioned this, but I did finish the Lord of the Rings trilogy and tried to go into The Hobbit, and I made it about an hour and a half into The Hobbit before I shut it off.
Yeah, I couldn't get into The Hobbit. I think the Lord of the Rings trilogy is pretty classic, really. It's like
Yeah,
uh definitely the definitive version of the books by Tolkien, but obviously there's license taken. You can't just take the page and put it on film. You got to be aware that you're making a film and adapting it from a written, prose
right.
piece. So, but yeah, I thought it was pretty awesome. Also, checked out Fire Walk with Me,
Oh, nice.
revisited that, and that's totally satisfying as usual. That's been about it for me, really.
All right. Sheldon?
A busy week. I ended up, I think, I don't know if it was this week, but I ended up watching that French As Above, So Below about the catacombs.
Oh yeah, great one.
Yeah,
Oh,
which I was surprised. I was surprised at it. I actually enjoyed it a lot. It was I actually found it pretty spooky in a few areas, and I was impressed. Having visited the catacombs a couple of times, it was kind of cool. And I remember when I first went out with ISIS Jeff, and there was a woman that I'd been in touch with through MySpace, who was a part of like the whole rock thing in Paris, and she
mm,
wanted to meet me in person, and she said, "Oh, do you want to visit the catacombs?" And I was like, I don't know what our schedule is, but yeah. She's like, "Yeah, I've got some friends who explore the part that's not the public don't know about, and we enter through the hole right on where the river, like the Seine is." So it was actually kind of similar. So it was kind of funny watching that movie and going, well, I'm glad I didn't go.
That's awesome.
Oh man. Yeah, that was a pretty good one. I remember being surprised by it because I think reviews were pretty bad, and
Mhm.
that was, I think, during like the found footage boom where it was getting a
Yeah.
little tiresome at that point. But I thought that was a better version of what was happening at the time.
Yeah, I think the thing of the night, the Dante's Inferno sort of thing, the nine stages of hell, and like
Mm,
the narrative sort of opened up with new surprises and new sort of reveals, if you like, that were more and more sort of scary and depressing. So, and just the claustrophobia of it, and the
yeah.
futility of going down, all the time into hell, and not really understanding. I thought it was done quite well.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's one I got to revisit. I haven't seen it since it came out, so
$3.79 on Amazon.
that can't beat that.
It's
Yeah,
that
that was
79 that makes a difference.
definitely a good one. I always enjoyed that film, and anything that connects to some sort of like Dante's Inferno, or like a little bit more of like a literary connection. I always enjoy that.
Yeah, and I gotta say, like, although I've been to Paris, I don't know, like 10 times, 12 times in my life, never did anything like that. Like, I would have loved to gone to the catacombs, but that's just as both of you guys know, when you're on tour, like you're working. It's not like a big free for all. You can't just go and do whatever you want.
Well, the catacombs
Yeah.
themselves fairly underwhelming. You're not really missing that much.
Mm.
There's usually some group of Americans from Idaho. They're going, "Oh my God, look at that!" And there's no actor there at all. It's just like, shut up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but still, I think I saw Jim Morrison's grave one of my trips to Paris. That was like the only touristy thing I ever did.
Pale Lachaise, yeah.
Yeah, kind of cool.
Well, as you guys know, we have a voicemail, a way of communicating with the listeners called the Necro phone. And if you want to reach us and leave a voicemail, give us your feedback on an episode or make suggestions, you could do so at 908-913-0782. Once again, that's 908-913-0782. And to kick things off, we've got Alan.
What's up, Necromaniacs? It's Alan from the land of death metal and sweaty balls, Central Florida. Found you guys about a month ago. Desperately looking for a horror movie podcast that doesn't annoy me, and you guys fit that perfectly. I went and watched Long Legs this past weekend and dug it. Dump at the end was a little annoying, but we still left the theater with a lot of stuff to speculate about and to theorize about. Liked it. It was good. I've been in a real exploitation mode lately. Watching a lot of 70s movies, like Italian crime, police procedural movies. I think they're called Police Attesha movies, something like that. I don't know. Umberto Lenzi, he makes a lot of good ones. Watched a lot of his. Also been into like early 70s Japanese pinky violence. Didn't even know it was a thing until recently. They're like girl gang or girl prison movies. And they got all the exploitation tropes that I love. Wanted to ask you guys for some beginner weird fiction books. I've been pouring through like Deep Space Nine books, and it'd be cool to slip into like something like a nutty, gory book that's, completely opposite of Star Trek books I've been lost in lately. You guys are doing great shit, and we're slowly getting through all your older episodes, and I can't wait for the new ones. Keep it up, guys.
Thanks, Alan, for calling in. And yes, I too am annoyed by most horror podcasts. There's like a very short list of horror podcasts that I like and enjoy, and I'm happy that you enjoy Necromaniacs because I think a lot of the reason why Mike and I started this thing back in the day was because of our feeling that there was like a void in this space of enjoyable content. So that's why we kicked this thing off. Dude, weird fiction. That's my main love when it comes to horror writing. So I got a couple of things to recommend for you. First off, I'm going to recommend Shadow over Innsmouth by H.P. Lovecraft, and that ties in case you've seen the film Dagon. It's it's based on that short story. So if you saw the movie Dagon and you wonder where that fits into the Lovecraft world, I would hustle over to Shadow over Innsmouth. It's a loose sort of adaptation of that short story. Of course, I have to mention Thomas Ligotti, and I know that Jeff, I know you're a big fan of his, and
very big fan.
My recommendation of a good starting point is the collection of Teatro Grotesco. That's pretty much my go-to collection of his. Any input on that, Jeff?
That would be my recommendation, and I think the story that it's named after is a great starting point for someone getting into Thomas Ligotti. Like either that or The Darkness was the first thing I ever read by him in a collection called 999, which was a bunch of horror writers, and that was the first Ligotti I ever read. And
that's actually one of my favorite short stories of his.
Mine too, and it's a great, like, if you can handle that, you can handle his other writing, because it's a little dense and hard to get. It's not exciting like a Stephen King story or something like that, but it is a great, like, this is what Thomas Ligotti is, right there in that story.
And if you do enjoy the Legati stuff, I would recommend going over to Cadabra Records, Chiroptera Press, and they're doing these incredible deluxe editions of his work. And if
Mm.
you want to listen to someone read his stories, John Paget is the man, and he is the voice of Thomas Legati on all the Cadabra Records audiobooks. So definitely check that out. As far if you do want to read something that's not strict weird fiction, but like exciting and works within that realm of weird fiction as well as you know, sort of that occult, folksy sort of horror. Adam Neville,
Mhm.
the reddening, Reddening, and the Ritual. These are two separate pieces. Those are great. Weird, folksy, exciting, excellent writing, good characters. Highly recommend that. And then also Ted Klein, Dark Gods. I know that
Mhm.
you're a big fan of Ted Klein as well.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
finally, Brian Evanson, he wrote a novel called Last Days, which I love his short stories, but the Last Days novel is like weird fiction meets like a hard-boiled detective kind of occult crime sort of film, thing. So yeah, that's my recommendations.
Gotta also I wanted to add Ramsey Campbell to that pile
Oh,
of
yeah.
someone who's not quite weird fiction, but a little bit more traditional horror, but it's also but very strange at the same time.
Yeah.
Uh, he's one of my favorites as well.
And then if you're interested in films that have that weird cosmic bent, any of the films by Benson and Moorhead are great. And those are like Something in the Dirt, The Endless, Spring, like those types of movies. They're like weird fiction mumblecore sort of films.
Yeah, yeah, accurate.
Yeah. So next up, we've got Mike from Pennsylvania.
Hey, Necro Hoods. It's Mike from Telford. Just getting ready to go back into work. I'm on my lunch here. I watched a bunch of movies lately, and most of them were not good, so I'm not going to recommend them. But I will tell you about two that I saw recently that I thought were pretty good. One's called Ensumed the Darkness. It's from 1970. It's a Robert Foyce movie, the guy that did the Dr. Phibes movies. Did a couple other things I can't think of, but he's made some good ones. It's a cool movie. Pamela Franklin's in it. She was from The Legend of Hell House. And it's about two girls that are like taking a bike trip across France. And one of them disappears, and there's some fucking shady people around the villages and shit. So I don't want to give away too much. It's a cool movie. Definitely check that one out. I bet you guys have already seen that. And then I just got this movie from Vinegar Syndrome. I can't believe I'm going to do this. I'm going to recommend a new movie. It's called Eight Eyes. It's a Vinegar Syndrome production. I believe they made it over in Eastern Europe. It's more in line with the kind of things that are happening now that I don't always like. But I wasn't sorry I watched this, and the story had a cool twist. There's a married couple that are honeymooning in Eastern Europe, and they crash this wedding, and then they meet this guy at this fucking wedding, and he befriends them, and you get bad vibes from this guy right away. He calls himself St. Peter, and yeah, he's a bad guy, but the movie kind of goes somewhere you're not really expecting, or maybe you guys will expect it because you see a lot more of these newer things. But if you haven't checked them out, they're worth your time. I look forward to tomorrow, and I hope you all guys are doing good, and I'll talk to you soon. All right, later.
Great hearing from you, Mike. It's the week doesn't seem complete unless we get a call from you, and I'm happy to hear from you again. Yeah. And Soon the Darkness. I haven't seen that. That's a killer title. Are you familiar with this film, Jeff, or Seldon?
I'm not. No.
No.
Yeah. Neither with Eight Eyes. But what's interesting about that too is it's a Vinegar Syndrome original, and I'm glad to see that those guys are getting into creating original content, because that's another go-to of mine for anything like horror, exploitation, sleaze, like that sort of stuff.
Mm.
And that's it for calls this week. So once again, if you guys want to reach out to us, hit us up at that number. So that brings us to this week's feature and episode 1 of Mayhem Down Under. And what an iconic place to start with the infamous SNOWTOWN Murders.
Yes.
Yeah. Directed by Justin Kurzel, screenplay by Kurzel and Sean Grant. Released May 19th, 2011. 120 agonizing minutes. So yeah, I just want to run down the cast real quick. Daniel Henshaw as John Bunting, who sort of I guess like a spiritual cousin to Neil Maskell in some ways.
Yes, yeah, that's sort of the sort of nice looking guy, looks friendly, but is very, very good at playing a monster.
Yeah. Lucas Pittaway as Jamie Vlasakis. Aaron Viergiver as Robert Wagner. I'm going to go through some of these other people. Anthony Groves as Troy, his brother, his older brother. Richard Green as Barry. He plays a pretty important role in this. Bob Adrians as Gavin, which probably one of the most like, we'll talk about it when we get to Gavin, you know what I mean? But yeah. So that's it, man. And this film is based on true events that happened in Adelaide and back in the 90s. So yeah, there's this sort of true element to this thing, which gives a little bit more weight to the film.
Absolutely. I mean, this movie almost has a feeling like you're watching a documentary at times.
It's like reality TV in some ways to me. Like when I watch it, there's sort of the distance between like what you'd normally expect from a narrative film. It's been closed in. It's like you're there experiencing it like a here's a reality show about being in a serial killer's family almost.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's such a cold feeling movie. And I always associate Australia as being, warm and hot. And this movie feels cold to me. Like, I don't think the sun shines once in this movie.
Yeah.
And even the appearance of it, like the cinematography, like the filtering it's like this almost gray, very washed out sort of look to the film.
Yeah, I think it was mostly handheld too. I think all the dramatic scenes was all done with a handheld camera. And there's a couple, shots of landscapes and things like that. But other than that, again, they're adding to that documentary feel. Like it feels like you are there in the room with these people.
Yeah, and I think that authenticity that emanates from it, and it's very powerful, that authenticity, which is, I think, really enhances how disturbing it is to view the film. But I think when Mike, you were talking about the cast, there are only actually 2 actors in that film. The rest of the cast were people that lived in the town. They're not actors.
Oh wow! Damn.
Yeah. So the Justin Kurzel actually, one of the main reasons he made the movie was he actually grew up in that part of North Adelaide. So he was fascinated by it, obviously, because he understood the culture there and the environment, I guess. But he decided that, to give it that authenticity and that real feel, to use people that lived in that area, so they were like real people. They weren't people, I think, that had experienced any contact with the actual events, but they were definitely part of that population. So, when they're sitting around the dining room table having the meals and there's that, I don't know, it feels so close because they seem so real, and it's like, yeah, because they are.
Right.
One of the things I noticed, there's a lot of meals like this. There's a lot of like scenes of people eating and having meals and just talking in this film. Food plays like I was trying to figure out what, like, I've seen this movie a couple times, so it's like this time around I was like, man, they're eating a lot in this movie. I wonder if there's any kind of like significance to eating, and I just found that interesting.
I think it was
thought that
sorry,
too.
go on, Ted.
No, go ahead, Seldon.
I think in answer to that, I might, when I watched it, again the second time, and I did notice the eating, and I felt like it really emphasized John Bunting's manipulations. So it really gave you that sense that he was bringing people together, you know, being this convivial host. Because, you know, most of the meals were him like, you want some of this? You want some of that? Now, come on, have some of this. Have a sausage, you know.
Right.
And it sort of really, it was an interesting way to show, you know, in one way he's being like really friendly, like have a meal, but at the same time he was there was a menace about it. It was almost like, if you don't have another egg, you know, like he had that look on his face. You know, it was kind of
like you were somehow going to like insult him by not taking his food.
Right.
Yeah.
I also think it adds a little bit to how casual murder was for John Bunting, that they could commit a gruesome murder and then go out for a nice Chinese meal. Like I think that also sort of it accentuated that, like, this is nothing to this guy. Like, you can just, you know, chop someone up and then let's go have a curry.
I think also, yeah, and I think in to enhance that, it's so I think part of the horror of the film is that something so unremarkable about everything. You know, we usually, when you see a horror film or a movie about, you know, serial killers or whatever, it's very dramatic. The characters are very enhanced. It's very like, he's so evil, and, you know, and they focus on enhancing that. But whereas this, it was really like, it's kind of like real life. You know, I mean, I'm not that I would know what you would do after killing someone, but it's, you know, like, you know, they're living in this isolated, you know, part of town, and there's nothing to do. So yeah, they go and get a meal, and it sort of it sort of really creates that nonchalance about everything that makes it haunting. You know, they don't feel anything. They're just like, yeah, you know, just gonna have some Chinese now. You know?
Yeah.
Very
I completely
realistic.
agree. Yeah.
And the film sort of starts like midstream in the middle of their lives too. I mean, we get to the family, the Vlasakis family, you know, which is you know, Jamie, his mother, his older brother Troy, and his two younger brothers. And we see Jeffrey, who is the guy who lives across the street from them. And the mother is like, I have to go see my ex. Could you watch the kids?
Yeah.
Right. And like right quick, you get to understand just how, like, just completely uncompromising and brutal this movie is. And once again, like in a nonchalant, like unremarkable way, where we discover Jeffrey's abusing the kids. You know, not so much. I don't think Troy's abused, because he's not part of that little crew that goes over there. And yeah, there's these like very disturbing scene of Jeffrey photographing the kids. Yeah, but then I don't know. Do you think that Jamie was really the only one who was like, you know, violated by Jeffrey, or even the other two younger kids? Or there was an implication that Jamie was the only one who was really you know, violated proper by Jeffrey?
I think in the movie, yeah, because I as far as I could find, Jeffrey was not a real person. And I think it's sort of a combination of things that happened to Jamie earlier in his life, represented as a person in the movie, to show that like this had happened to Jamie at some point before.
Or you mean like connecting with the actual story you're talking about, with the actual true crime?
With the actual true crime.
Yeah, okay, right. Yeah, because like the true story that allegedly Jamie was abused by his father, who was deceased at the time of all this stuff. But in the film, the father is like no longer in their lives, like they're divorced or whatever. And Jeffrey's like the neighbor. So yeah, I can see him being this sort of like you know, an analog of his father and the other, you know, people that have abused him in his life.
Yeah,
go on, Jeff.
No, go ahead, Seldon.
I think also that was used as like you were also kind of saying, Jeff, about him representing some like a broader perspective on maybe Jamie's past. But I think it just allowed the film to lead into John Bunting's obsession. Like it introduced us to the context, rather than just like here's a guy that starts killing people. It's like there's this there's this kind of environment of pedophilia and sadism and abuse that already exists, and you hit with it immediately. And then John Bunting comes in. I thought it was an interesting vehicle to sort of almost cut to the chase, to sort of create the environment that they're living in.
Yeah,
Right.
because
Yeah.
Bunting just shows up out of nowhere. He just
Right.
one day he's in their house and he's like cooking breakfast for everyone.
Yeah. Want some eggs?
Yeah, yeah, and like he's revving his motorcycle on Jeffrey's lawn, and even though he's wearing a helmet, you can see him smiling with his eyes, like how much glee and joy he's getting out of tormenting this guy.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
the real John Bunting, you know, he came from like a loving family, but he was just one of those bad eggs, apparently, like a guy who took glee in killing animals and was also abused, except for, you know, the loving family part, I guess, was like a normal family, but there was abuse going on in his life. And Robert Wagner, the two of them were like both abused sexually as kids, and they were like in the true crime story, they were the ones who were doing the lion's share of the murdering and you know, mayhem and all that sort of stuff.
Right. Yeah. Shit, I forgot what I was gonna say.
In the film, Wagner is kind of like doesn't really say much until like towards the end of the movie. He's just sort of this presence.
Yeah, exactly. In real life, he was John's main accomplice, but here he's sort of sidestepped to really tell the story through Jamie's eyes.
Yeah, yeah. So
I wanted to mention real quick, the real John Bunting was into, like, had a fascination with Nazism, and
what a surprise.
yeah, and the movie doesn't really get into that, which I thought was a strange detail to admit from what really happened. It's I guess sort of hinted at when he shaves his head and Jamie's head, but the movie doesn't really go into that. Not that I caught anyway.
I think they kept it pretty. I think maybe there was in terms of even what I was talking about before with the meals and stuff. I think there was I think it was a strong effort to actually avoid drama. I know that sounds sort of oxymoronic considering the movie, but I think there was this idea that it's just going to be, it's so flat in tone. There's no sort of drama. There's no, you know, like there's no brass swell in the soundtrack or anything, or violins or drama. It's just such a calm movie all the way. I mean, even the murder scenes are kind of calm. It's even though they're awfully violent, there's this sort of unremarkable. And I think like maybe avoiding, you know, his interest in the Nazi stuff was to just sort of focus more on just what happened, you know, the actual that claustrophobic environment, perhaps. You know?
Well, there's
distraction.
With a few exceptions, most of the murders take place off screen. You just see like the aftermath. You know, and there's the same sort of format with everything where, you know, which I found kind of humorous, was like the inevitable edited phone call voicemail of like, I can't take it anymore, I'm leaving town. And it's like, how many people actually decide just to disappear, you know?
Yeah, but it seemed to work in real life. I mean, he did this what 10, 11 times.
Yeah, true.
With the phone calls. One way I thought the movie was really interesting, like you were talking about it being sort of flat. The good way the movie showed escalation was in the meetings that John Bunting was holding, where he's just sort of holding court. They're all sitting around the dinner table, you know, drinking beer and talking about like, it almost feels like a vigilante group getting together, like a neighborhood watch. And they do this 3 times throughout the movie, and each time it's a little escalated. Like John is a little bit like showing more and more of his true personality. Whereas in the first meeting, he's like, "Oh yeah, hey, what would you do? What about you?" And then as it goes on, he gets a little bit more like stern and scary in those meetings.
Yeah, I like that scene where they're having the meeting and the transsexual guys like talking, mentioning names, and he'd go, "Oh, you know, Gerald McPherson. Hang on, mate. Hang on."
Yes, yeah. Hang on. Okay,
just
Kev.
so calm.
Yeah. That was really incredible. I thought that was a cool way to show escalation. And like Mike, you were saying, most of the murders take place off screen, and you'll just hear, one of the voicemails that they left on someone's answering machine. But if you're unfamiliar with the true story, you're not really quite sure what that means right away.
Yeah, because I know the first time I saw this movie, I was like, what the hell's even going on right now? Because like even like Barry, the cross-dresser, is like shows up out of nowhere, and he walks into the house and into Elizabeth's house, like the Velasakis house, and he's like, "Do you know who I am?" And she's like, "Yeah, I do." I'm like, "Well, who are you?" You know what I mean? Like they don't really go into like, "All right,
Yeah.
great. Who are you?" Like and Barry apparently it seems like is the sort of the connection to Bunting, right?
Mm.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't know.
they don't really they're just sort of one day having these meetings at the mother's house, at Elizabeth's house. I'm not sure what her connection was to this whole world or anything like that. And again, the movie sort of, it just goes, like it keeps going, doesn't pause to hold your hand through any of this. It's like, hey, keep up or you're gonna be lost.
I just that scene though where Barry shows up with some dude in like
Yeah.
a tracksuit, and he's like just rolls up and you know who I am, right? And she's like, yes, I do. I'm like, okay, they just don't go anywhere with that. But there's like that's sort of it's such great writing though. You know what I mean? Where there's a connection. It's almost like in the same way that Edgar Allan Poe, when he writes his short stories, doesn't really give you the full background on the characters. It's like, okay, you need to know these things, that they're connected somehow. And you need to
Right.
know that this person, and you sort of like, that's really the bare bones of what you need to know. You don't need to know why she knows him. She's like, she knows him. And then he is instrumental in bringing Bunting and his evil into her life.
Yeah,
Right.
I think that sort of minimalism that you're mentioning there in terms of the screenplay as well is reflected also like in the cinematography and the way the story's told. It just leaves like the actions of and just I don't know, like what the situation was is just revealed to you in front of you, to your immense displeasure that you have to sit through it, like I mean, even the scene, which is one of my favorite movie scenes, for some unbeknownst reason, I just find it so profound, is when he just walks out into the backyard and John Bunting's chopping up a kangaroo, like with a tomahawk, like just, oh, g'day, mate, how you going? Yeah, hand me the bucket. Like, and it's just the sound, and there's no, you don't know why he's doing it. There's no music. It's just he's chopping up a kangaroo. And Jen, I think it's great sound design, but when they throw they go over, they just walk over to the guy's house and throw the remains like out of a bucket against the door and the couch, and just the sound it makes it just made me want to turn the TV off. Like, just no, I can't watch the rest of this. This is insane. Like, and it was just the way it was done. It was so undramatic that it really punched you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Another scene like that is when John is buying all the kids ice cream, and like, oh, I'm buying my girlfriend's kids ice cream, and then you see why he's buying it for him, so they can deface the neighbor's house by writing like slurs on his windows. It is such a creepy, sinister scene.
Yeah, sinister, yeah. And the dog.
Oh God, the
Oh
dog
God.
part. Yeah.
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 I couldn't find anything of that happening in real life. But man, yeah, that was a tough scene to watch.
Oof. Just the way, and once again, the script for it's like, I've never shot a gun, or just shoot, or just do it now, mate. Oh, what am I going to shoot? I don't know. What about the dog?
Yeah.
No, 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 no.
Yeah, and again, they're eating. They're having a curry. Like John has made lunch for Jamie, and he's just casually chomping away on this chicken curry. And man, it's such a well played scene. Like John again seems like very charming. He's sort of smiling, And as the scene goes on, it just gets more and more evil. And I think that's when you really first see like how truly psychotic John is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
And then,
Yeah.
well, when Jamie shoots the dog, he only injures it. He wounds the dog, and Jamie's like, the dog's not, you didn't kill it. And then he just goes over and finishes him off, like just like
Like it's
as
nothing.
like it's nothing, you know what I mean? And like that guy didn't wake up in the morning thinking that he was going to kill the dog, you know what I mean? Like it just
Right.
was like in the moment, spur of the moment decision that only a true psychopath would actually come up with, you know?
Yeah, I mean, they made it a point to say the dog's name. So he named this dog. He had some sort of connection with it. But obviously, connections or feelings these aren't things that John really, is fully capable of forming. It's again, it might have been fictionalized, but it is a great way to show progression of like who John really is.
Well, in some of the research I did on John Bunting, like I mentioned earlier, that he did have all of those telltale signs of someone who had become a psychopath. He was abused sexually, and they mentioned his violence towards animals as a kid. So
Right.
that sort of disconnection from emotion was definitely part of his his emotional background.
Right, exactly. Yeah, John is in the film. Is this very charismatic guy. You can see why he would become sort of this cult figure to people in this neighborhood. I thought they did a really great job of conveying that, and the actor did a phenomenal job of that.
Well, the other thing too I liked about it was that you really don't know any of his background at all. Like John is
Mm.
just this like sort of just force of malevolence that just appears like fully formed out of the shadows, and it just boom in their lives. And you don't know that he was abused, or the actual guy was abused. You don't know why he's doing these things. And then he puts out this sort of half-baked motivation that, oh, I'm actually doing something positive by killing these pedophiles, and projecting all this stuff onto these people. And but then, of course, his criteria for who gets killed starts broadening.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, I liked that too. The this hatred disguised as morality, which again, I always find links between older films and current society, and I really found that very chilling. The pedophile hunter vigilante. I feel like you're starting to like for the last 8 years or so, you've been seeing sort of more of that, where people show up to pizza shops in DC with guns looking to free kids.
Oh
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Yeah, definitely. Like the whole like QAnon, oh yeah, we're gonna rid the world of pedophiles. Everyone's really hung up on that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And John the psychopath was, and that was his justification for what he was doing. But no one did, like I think maybe one of the victims was like an actual pedophile, but in the movie he has Barry, giving him addresses and stuff. Where in real life, John just picked these people out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, okay, yeah, he's a pedophile, and just maybe in the beginning made himself believe that and made everyone around him believe that. But as more and more time went on, like you just saw that this guy's just fucking randomly killing people.
Well, in real life, I believe, from what I read, that the Barry character, the real person was actually doing that, was telling John Bunting who was who was a pedophile, and giving him
Oh,
all.
okay.
So that actually happened. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. I was mistaken then. And that was one of his first victims too. Like he outlived his usefulness pretty quick, and then the guy didn't even realize he was sealing his own fate by by trying to help this guy.
Yeah,
Yep.
and once again, like the first time you watch this film, you're not even really sure what's going on. You just hear like a voicemail left by Barry where he's leaving town, and and it's just like, oh, Barry left town. And it's like that's really not what's happening. And then we find, sure enough, that he fell under the scythe of John Bunting.
And this community is so fucked up that worked. Like, oh, Very left town. Okay, and they kept doing this, and it kept working, and no one seemed to realize that their circle of friends is getting smaller and smaller.
I think also like the way the film portrayed that, and I don't know if it was intentional as far as the concept, but or whether it was a budget consideration, but for a film that's filmed essentially on location and a lot of outdoor stuff and and so on, it really doesn't stray from the front of the house, like and just that little environment, and it gives you an intense sense of claustrophobia and these people just being obsessed with things. And the only time they ever, from memory, the only thing they ever did outside that was when they went to that Chinese restaurant after killing. But other than that, it's just in the living rooms and out on the streets, riding motorbikes and just throwing kangaroo heads at people, like
Yeah.
it's very claustrophobic. You don't really get you as a viewer don't get any relief at any point from it, because it starts feeling really dirty and gross. And I'm pretty sure I think it was Roger Ebert, when he reviewed it, said it's the only movie he's had to put on pause and to go for a walk around the block halfway through.
I could totally understand that. I could definitely understand that because and it's like you guys have all probably seen neighborhoods like that, you know what I mean, where there's just like this sense of despair. And I was watching an Australian like true crime thing on YouTube about it, and they were interviewing the detectives who investigated the SNOWTOWN murders. And they were describing, first he went into how Adelaide is like, that's a great city, people go to work there. There's like a nice, great wine and business and all this stuff. But then he's like, but there are neighborhoods where are filled with despair, where the idea of having gainful employment never even crosses their minds, that they're just living in this like, welfare state, and no one even ever dreams about getting a job or a career or doing anything besides focusing on their insular existence.
Yeah. I noticed that too. No one in this movie is ever shown doing anything as work related, really. Like literally no one.
Except for maybe the one guy, the guy that the final victim seems to be someone, because he wants a computer and so forth. There seems to be some implication that he actually does something, but it's not really stated. But yeah, other than that, everyone just seems to hang around smoking cigarettes.
Yeah, exactly. And then, it was one of the first scenes in the movie is people pushing shopping carts to their homes. And that's a great way. Like anytime you're in a neighborhood and you see shopping carts abandoned, like, you might be in a sketchy part of town.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
in the actual in the case, that was one of the ways where they just Barry, I think his name was Barry Lane, the actual guy who was killed.
Mm-hmm.
He was someone who was on some kind of disability, and he was getting checks. So when he disappeared, when they first started, it was almost by accident they started investigating this thing. They noticed that there was withdrawals being made on his account after he'd been gone, and that all of the withdrawals were coming from some gas station in some remote part of town. And that's how they started. That was the beginning of them connecting all these murders to Bunting and Wagner.
Right. And I thought this was a smart move. Like you never get a sense that the police are closing in on this guy, when in reality there was they got away with a couple murders since the police were on to him. But the movie doesn't get into that at all. Like the noose is tightening around their neck. They just keep going and going until the very end.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess like in the real case, it went on between like 92 and 98. So there was a pretty big stretch of time where they were just killing people.
I think the stuff that happened in 92, 93 was John Bunting it was separate from that particular spate of killings.
Oh, okay.
I think he was living in another part of Adelaide, and that was unrelated, and he killed a couple of people and buried them in his backyard. And then he moved into this other neighborhood where the film set, and that's when he started getting all these other people involved in this totally almost separate sort of, and that's what I understand from what I've read, is that he did it in two waves of
Yeah.
killing. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Um, what we talked a lot about John, but the movie focuses on Jamie really, and
Who
I,
just
I
got
like
released from prison a few months ago, by the way.
Really?
really,
Yep.
wow, um, wow. Okay. Well, I thought the movie portrayed him a little bit sympathetically, or more so maybe than he deserved in real life. I know Jamie was a victim, and it's terrible, but Jamie was a part of these kids, did take place, have a hand in some of these murders.
Well, yeah. I
And
mean, it's according to the film, I don't know, if allegedly, and according to the film, he was the one who actually killed his brother Troy.
right, yeah, I wasn't sure if that was true. I don't know if you know if that was true or not, Seldon, but I know he was present
Yeah.
during the murder. And I mean, we got to talk about that scene since it is like the most infamous scene in the movie. I think it's the only killing we actually see on screen, and it lasts. It just keeps going, man. That scene doesn't end.
I think in terms of what you were just saying, Jeff, as far as Jamie being a sympathetic character, I think this film needed that, and I think that was probably a conscious decision by the filmmakers, because as an audience, you need someone to drive the film through empathy. Otherwise, you're just watching like a car crash almost. Like, I think it gave it, as a viewer, it really drew you into, because you view the film through his eyes essentially. And so having someone that sort of seems like a victim and vulnerable and almost has a moral compass, I guess, is you. And so you're in those dining room areas, having, that's you in that kitchen. That it really makes you feel the energy in the room, I think. Whereas if they'd sort of been a bit more sort of like realistic about, he's a killer as well, you wouldn't get that empathy, and you wouldn't be able to indulge in the horror so much, I think.
I totally agree. And it makes the ending even more powerful, where by the end, Jamie is completely sort of transformed into this, numb monster. Like, it shows him conflicted a lot throughout the movie. And then by the time we get to David, who wants to buy a computer, he basically leads him to the Wicker Man,
Yeah, he knows
yeah.
Yeah.
like he has several opportunities to change his mind. They have like an hour and a half drive, and he doesn't. And I thought that was a really great way to see how different Jamie was by the end than he was in the beginning. He's fully transformed.
Yeah. You wanted to talk about that scene though with his brother. I
Oh
interrupted.
my God. No, that's yeah. I think this is the scene everyone, when they think of this movie, this is what this is the scene that they remember. I watched this like Thursday, and I hadn't seen this movie since maybe 2012. And that scene was the reason why. Like, God, I never want to watch that again.
Yeah.
I mean, it just, and you know what? It was a good decision to really not show all the murders, and because no one wants to sit through 2 hours of that. But showing like this particular murder, like how cruel and sadistic these guys were, was a great artistic choice. Like, you have to see what they're capable of. You don't have to see it for 2 hours, but you got to see it for however long the scene goes on for. It felt like forever. It felt like 10 minutes. It probably was like 3 or 4, but it felt like a long time. Jamie knows what they're about to do to his brother. He leaves, and you think that's going to be it, and then John comes out like, no, come on in, mate, like, you're going to watch this. And Jamie keeps trying to sort of leave, but John won't let him. And just to show like how cruel they were, like the pliers on the toes, the beatings, and that choking. I felt the choking was, again, John manipulating Jamie into finally killing his brother. Like, we're gonna choke him, let him go. Choke him, let him go. And he's thinking, he's like, Jamie won't be able to take this. He's gonna take over because he just wants it to be over. And that's exactly what happens.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
and Bunting is like looking into his eyes the whole time, and it's just so uncomfortable and just evil. And it was hard to get through, even though it's like a 3 minute scene, but it was like it just went on forever. It felt like.
I think one of the
Yeah.
reasons it's hard to watch too is it's like unlike a lot of murders. I mean, there's a lot of murder scenes we've watched over the years in movies, but I think that one in a way stands alone because it really, aside from the showing the sadistic nature of the perpetrators, there's something that really captures the loneliness of being in that situation, that the horror of your own demise in such a callous and shitty place to be, that like it really captures the sadness of murder in a way that I think many movies have never really been able to capture in any way. I mean, that's why it's hard to watch, I think, because it's tragic and awful and violent, but there's something terribly lonely about it, I find, like for the guy being killed. It's just he knows what's going on, and it's just, well,
Yeah, like he knows even he himself just wants it to be over. He knows there's no getting out of this.
yeah.
And his brother Troy is sort of portrayed as like well, not sort of. I mean, he sexually assaults Jamie in the film, and we have to watch it. And one of like the many uncomfortable scenes in this movie. And even though he's capable of doing these awful things, you have sympathy for what's happening to him.
Yeah.
A little bit of sympathy for sure. He doesn't deserve to be tortured, or maybe he doesn't deserve to be murdered over that, but he's definitely not a sympathetic character in any sense, really.
Yeah, not at all.
Yeah.
But you
But,
still you put yourself in that situation. It's so hard to watch.
Well, the part that really got me was when you got the sense that he had pretty much given up when he recorded the message to his mother, and Bunting was coaching him along what to say, and it's like that was the point where it felt like he had resigned himself to not leaving that room alive. And he's like, I just have to do this so they can just end my life and I can be done with being tortured,
Right.
Mm.
Yeah. Oh God. And that word, what about the mother? Like, it never shows her like figuring out what's happening. You just see her progressively get more and more depressed and run down as the film goes on. And at one point, she's having a really bad fight with John, which we see through Jamie's eyes. So you see Jamie go to the door, John slams the door in his face, and I kind of got the idea, the mother like found something out.
Yeah, but they never really expand on it. Like Bunting is just like, she said, fuck off. And that was it.
Yeah. And then it shows her in church standing up. She's like, I have something to say. And it focuses on John. John's like, what's she going to say? Like, there's so much tension in that scene where she stands up in church and then says, I just want to say I love my family, and sits down. Like, I think she wanted to confess something. As I believe in real life, the mother helped cover up one of the murders. One or two? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, she had this huge weight on her. And you see it show on her more and more as the film goes along.
Yeah, I think the mother was just one of these like wreckage, of just the society that they live in, just one of these people who just is a total product of just the depression and misery and despair of her environment, really.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Like, I wondered like how, like, I don't think like one guy fathered all these kids. I think she had children with like several different guys. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but the movie doesn't really like judge her at all. And again, it really portrays her sort of sympathetically, like she's just so beaten down by her life and by this guy, this force coming into her life that is John Bunting, that seems so positive and progressively gets darker and darker until it, basically, destroys her.
Probably one of the more heartbreaking scenes of this thing was the murder of Gavin, which was Jamie's like literally his only friend. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
The only person that he probably felt comfortable being around, who wouldn't hurt him. And, unfortunately, Gavin was, someone who had issues with drugs. And
Yeah.
John Bunting saw that as being the biggest weakness that anyone can have. And he had to go, basically.
Mhm.
Yeah, he didn't fit the criteria of a pedophile. So, oh, he's a junkie, and he got Jamie hooked on smack. So yeah, he's got to go. And really, anyone who was just a minor inconvenience for John had to go.
Yeah.
Like his one of his other associates, Mark, who the movie doesn't focus on very much at all. Mark didn't actually kill anyone, but basically got his wife killed.
Exactly. Yeah. He's the guy who looked like he played bass in like I Hate God or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And his wife catches on to what's going on. And again, it's not shown. It's just sort of hinted at that, okay, she's got to go.
Yeah. And yeah, so dark movie, man. One of the darkest I think I've seen.
Yeah,
It
like
is so dark, yeah. It's very bleak. It leaves you, when you finish it, it leaves you feeling very empty. You end up feeling like the movie sort of looks at the end of it. You sort of like, you've got that cold sense of nothing. Like everything you look at just suddenly looks depressing. Like, you look across the room at your bookshelf and it's like, hate that bookshelf. You need to go for a walk after seeing that movie. Just sort of shake yourself free from its influence.
yeah, 100%. You did, Seldon. You're from Melbourne, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how far away from all this are you? I know Adelaide it isn't close.
No, I mean it was. I remember when it all came out as a a legal case and everything, and it was a big deal because it was a lot of it's a lot of murders, and the fact that it was multiple people and all that sort of thing, and it was I mean, just through the news and whatever, you didn't sort of get the feeling of what it actually was. It was just like a bunch of people killed a bunch of people, and you're like, geez, that's crazy.
Yeah.
But then they started, I think I remember reading more about it, in the early 2000s, and it was like, oh, it's pretty creepy. I actually had a meat pie with sauce in Snowtown.
Oh, okay.
A few years later, yeah, I was driving up that region. I don't know, I was on a road trip of some sort, and yeah, I was like, I hadn't intended to go. It was just accidental. But I remember driving. I was sort of not so much lost. I was just sort of winding my way through the because it's the Snowtown itself. It's like a town. Like it's in the middle of nothing. Like not nothing, but it's it's an isolated. It's not in the suburbs or anything.
Right.
And I remember just coming up to the road sign where it says the name of the town. Population 15,000 sort of thing. It said Snowtown, and I was like, oh shit. Wow, it's a Snowtown. And it was like, well, this is cool. I'm gonna get something to eat, because apparently that's what you do, according to John Bunting, is you got to eat when you're in Snowtown.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was kind of creepy. It was kind of weird. I mean, I went for a walk, and it was, I just tried to sort of get a sense of the feeling. But the problem was, like, I think in terms of what Mike said earlier, when I was in Snowtown, it was a sunny day, so it just didn't feel right,
Right. Yeah. Gosh. And I mean, really, only one of the murders happened in Snowtown.
Yeah,
But but that's where all the bodies were discovered. So it became the SNOWTOWN murders, and forever changed like the shape of that town.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they wanted to change the name to Rosetown because of the implication, but they refused. It's still Snowtown. And someone bought that bank and turned it into a residence.
Oh man.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah.
I mean, how can, if you live there, you have to know what happened there,
Yeah, you just feel like going, dude, you don't have to live there. There's other places to live. Like, they bought the building and moved and renovated it and moved in. Extraordinary. Amazing way to spend your money.
When they showed the bank in this film and I saw photos of the real bank, I started to wonder if they filmed it at the actual location. It looks just like, yeah, it looks identical. Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if they did. 'Cause it looks
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm curious. That is crazy that people live there now. I mean, Jesus Christ. I not the most. I don't know. I'm a little superstitious, but not like I enough so I wouldn't want to live there.
Yeah, I wouldn't be going down into the basement after 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
One of the interesting things about the bank and how they got rid of the body or tried to get rid of the bodies in the actual case, they chopped up some of the bodies. They put them in these like 55-gallon PVC drums and filled them with acid, thinking that it would dissolve the bodies. But the reality is that because there's so much water in the human body, when the bodies started discharging the water, it actually neutralized the acid. And most of the bodies were preserved because they were in like a basically an environment that just had there's no oxidation, there was no real rotting or anything like that. So when they found the bodies, they were able to identify them, and in some cases even determine what the cause of death was.
Yeah, they weren't exactly like. It almost seemed like they didn't really know what they were doing.
Yeah.
Like they're just dragging 8 bodies around with them like, in barrels. I mean, those things must have fucking stunk so bad.
Dude. Yeah, they definitely weren't criminal masterminds, that's for sure.
Right, yeah, exactly. I think John Bunting thought they were, but they really weren't. Like the fact that they could get away with it so long is truly one of the most shocking things about it.
Well, that also kind of touches on how like a lot of serial killers seem to get away with things. The people that they're murdering are just people no one cares about. You know what I mean? It's what comes to mind immediately is Jeffrey Dahmer's murdering, all these people in Milwaukee, and they're just in neighborhoods that no one cares. They're just like these like disposable people that are not, interesting at all. And that's why crime is prevalent in those areas.
Yeah, I mean, if those people are the community of people that where those people were murdered, I mean, the only people that knew of their existence were the other people. Like, there's no one outside of that to say, "Hey, where's Gavin gone?" Like, I haven't seen him for a while, because none of them were seen to be working. They all just hung out in that very tight group. So when they went missing, there was no one to notice.
Right? Yeah,
not a long time.
That's like so bleak when you really think about that.
It's very bleak.
Yeah, it's very depressing. Like someone's life can be just like snuffed out like that, and no one seems to notice.
Yeah.
Well, this is kind of like speaks to like some of the other films we're going to be talking about, which Necromaniacs is obviously a horror podcast, but these types of films and the subject that they explore, and it's and this is a great place to kick it off, is that like actual true life horror, and the horrific things that happen. There's no need for any kind of supernatural embellishments on it. Like this is real evil, and real true horror.
Yeah, I think it was a brave decision on the producers and the people involved to actually make this film, right, because there were another series of murders by a serial killer around the same time, a little bit earlier in the 90s. Ivan Milat, who were the backpacker murders, and he killed a bunch of backpackers in a forest, and that situation was one of the main inspirations for Wolf Creek.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So rather than looking at like something that was pretty terrifying and awful and turning into a sort of a fun schlock horror movie, they just went ahead and made a very realistic drama, matter of fact, didn't turn it into an entertaining film by any means. I thought that was, in terms of what pushes, the reasons for movies to be made is obviously money. And for them to just be given the go ahead to be like, yeah, we're going to make one of the most awful films ever made. Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to ask if you remember, was there any sort of backlash to this? Like people saying, why make a movie about this? This shouldn't exist. Do you remember anything like that?
I don't remember. I mean, I was living here when the movie was made, so I'd already moved out of Australia. I think. I mean, there probably was, but I think, like Mike was saying before, I think people probably didn't really care that much because the people that were killed didn't matter. You know, like it wasn't like it happened in a nice part of town, and you know, there's relatives. I think these people were so anonymous that perhaps the backlash was mild, but I can't speak on that with any authority because I was already living in New York by that stage.
Right. Yeah. So as a film, like, what do you give? What is your rating for this movie, Mike? What would you give it?
I gave it a 5. I don't think I've ever. The only other movie that comes close to this is Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer, as far as like this kind of like bleak, realistic point of view into some of the most horrible things that humans do to each other. And yeah, it's similar to Martyrs and Henry, movies that are not like you don't put them on when you're trying to like get ready for the weekend, or or you're on a date with a girl and you're like, oh, hey, let's have a movie night. Let's watch SNOWTOWN Murders, Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer, and Martyrs. Those are not films that you like bring up in those contexts, but they are like important films in the over culture. They're cultural sort of statements, in my opinion.
Yeah, totally agree. I give this a 5 as well, even though it's one of the hardest films to watch. You're not gonna like want to watch this over and over again, like you said, or like suggest to your partner, oh, I got something we can watch on a nice Friday night. It is. It does such a great job of showing just the bleakness and depression of this true story. And sometimes even I was like, why would anyone want to watch something like this? But I mean, it is so skillfully made, so well made. I give it a 5. It's a really well made movie.
And you, Seldon, what kind of rating would you give this?
I'll join you on the 5s. I think just as a film experience, it's very unique. I think in the canon of filmmaking, it's very, very, very well done. Like the subject matter is difficult, but I think the way it's a really fascinating sort of insight into the environment, that like the actual environment and situation that people, just ordinary people find themselves in. I think none of those people would have killed anyone except for John Bunting, but like they probably would have just gone through their lives smoking cigarettes out the front of the house and riding their bikes around and eating Chinese food if John Bunting hadn't come along. And I think there's something that really captures just the helplessness of people and just how useless and sad their lives can be, that this sort of stuff happens. And it's such a bleak movie, not just for the murder, but just for the society that it's set in. Like that's why it sort of feels so dirty and gross while you're watching it. It's an amazing film, but it's like the worst film I've ever seen at the same time, because I hate watching and I'm never watching it again.
I said that the first time I watched it back whenever 2012, like I will never watch it again. And then this came up, doing like Horror Down Under. I'm like, well, we gotta do SNOWTOWN. I'm gonna have to watch this again. And it really was such a nauseating, dark experience. Like like you said, it's very unique. Not a lot of movies really make you feel that way, but it's not an experience I really want to have again anytime soon.
Yeah, it's too intimate with murder and the process behind it. It's very intimate, and I think it's funny when you guys proposed doing this, and I was like, oh yes, no, that's a great movie to pick. Like, awesome, that's an amazing film. I'm on board. And then it was like 2 days before, because I just been busy. It's like, oh yeah, I've got to watch SNOWTOWN, right? Okay. And then it dawned on me what I was agreeing to. I was like, oh no. Can't get out of this.
How do I get out of this?
Yeah. Yeah, like exactly. Like you have to sort of psych yourself up to watch this.
Big time. Yeah,
Oh,
but it's brilliant. It's brilliant.
Jeff, have you ever seen Wake and Fright, which is like another film that we've been talking about doing?
I have not seen that.
Yeah, that in some ways, right? And correct me on this, Seldon. That was kind of the film that put like this style of Australian movie on the map, I guess, right? Would that be accurate to say that?
I think in many respects, yeah. I mean, it's certainly recognized yeah, I would say so. I'm trying to think of anything else, but it was part of a golden era of movies in the 70s in Australia where, there's a lot of not just movies of that genre or ilk, but it was a real flourish of interesting filmmaking, feature filmmaking, mainstream filmmaking back then. And Wake and Fright, yeah, I mean that's got some well-known actors in it as well. Like that wasn't underground when it was made, but it's you watch that movie and that really, I mean, it's based on a book, and they really captured the book so well because the book's amazing. And it was a famous Australian book at the time. And yeah, as a film experience, yeah, in a similar way, it's not as difficult to watch because it's not as confronting mostly. But it still has that oh God, this is hard. This is a difficult situation. I'm watching this movie. Yeah.
Well, similar to Snowtown, there has a character who undergoes like an incredible change in who he is. So yeah, there is a sort of a connection in some ways to it.
Yeah, and that sense of inescapability, like just locked into something. There's no real light on the horizon,
That seems to be a common thing in most Australian horror / crime films I've seen, like that this inescapable situation, dread, and not really dealing with the supernatural. Like I found most Australian horror films deal with something that is possible.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
It also features Donald Pleasance in this film too.
All right. I just underline that as something I need to watch immediately.
Yeah, I think it's on Shudder right now still.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Yeah, that's a movie that we need to do that as part of this series for sure.
It's
absolutely. Yeah.
A movie ahead of its time for sure.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, thanks, gentlemen. Yeah, thanks, gentlemen. This was a great way to kick this off. And yeah, thanks for listening, everyone.
It was awesome.